discussion and input on draft temporary moratorium ordinance. Set the public hearing on the ordinance as may be amended by discussion for May 11, 2026 first reading and public hearing, and June 8, 2026 second reading, public hearing, and adoption. Thank you, Ms. May.
Thank you. Good evening. County Attorney Denise May here to present to you, as I was directed at our last evening meeting, is to draft a legally viable moratorium ordinance on the acceptance, review, or approval of data center facilities as I've defined it for the purposes of this ordinance only. So I want to start with just some of the legal background on what is a moratorium, in this case a temporary moratorium, and what's its legal status, so that we understand that. Also called zoning in progress in some cases. It is a viable land use tool to promote your effective planning, and that comes from case law, and I point to that there. The intent of it is to maintain your status quo as long as it's rationally related to an actual general government welfare public safety issue in order to enact or attempt to enact development regulations in the process, okay? And that's a U.S. Supreme Court case. So moratoriums in Florida are temporary, okay? Measures enacted to suspend or prohibit activity while you make definitional uses and that sort of stuff and zone appropriately where you would like a new use to come into or where it should be. The Florida courts have recognized these as legitimate planning tools, as I said, so long as they are rationally related to the harm you're trying to correct, and the duration matters. You can't just indefinitely put a moratorium on. It's what is the actual reasonable time frame in order for you to do the research and the planning exercises to come up with your legislations. Also, in order to do so, the county must enact it as this, with the same formality required for ordinances that change zoning. So we're required to do 2 public hearings. Tonight is, while you will hear from your public, is not one of the public hearings. We will notice those in the paper, newspaper, as we would for any rezoning ordinance. That's part of the motion I'll be asking for at the end of this, to set it for May 11th and June 8th for that first and second hearing. But I have drafted, based upon the feedback that I got from you all and some of the concerns that we've seen in the literature, and so it's for discussion tonight as to whether this goes far enough, too far, or there's some amendments that you'd like to see. So currently it defines data center facilities for the purpose of the moratorium only. I want to stress that because this is not the definition I'm proposing for your planning exercise or how the regulation may define. It may define multiple levels of data center, hyperscale, medium scale, so forth. But for the purposes of the moratorium and to understand what we're preventing at this time, this is the definition that I have proposed, and that is a building, a dedicated space within a building or a group of buildings that house the computer systems and associated components, such as telecommunications and data processing systems, to be used for remote storage, processing, or distribution of large amounts of data. I think this covers almost anything that may be within a data center. It would cover cryptocurrency mining. It would cover AI. It would cover cloud computing. It would cover some that are just running computers for, let's say, data collection services for a particular industry. It meant to be very broad so that we can try and stop everything that may not end up being, this won't end up being your definition of a data center in any regulation. It would become more pinpoint. This is very large in general. It included some, again, non-exclusive examples of what data I am intending to capture there, computationally intensive applications such as cryptocurrency, artificial intelligence, weather modeling, genome sequencing, application hosting, cloud storage, video and technical streaming services. Again, this is not inclusive. This is just as including but not limited to give everybody an idea of the breadth of what we're trying to stop. The temporary moratorium is on the acceptance, review, or approval of applications for development permits, development orders, rezoning, or site plans. Development permits is very large. That includes building permits. That includes any site plan. It includes almost any permit or order that could come through here, including conditional use variance or any other type of ordinance that might come through. It must be limited in its duration and scope and be rationally related to the legitimate public welfare concern. Some of those welfare concerns are found within the whereas legislative intent of this ordinance. You'll see I wrote 3 pages of those. I've gone over those, but I wanted you to understand that it's up to 12 months from the effective date, which would be June 8th at your second hearing if everything goes as planned. It would allow you time to comprehensively study and review and discuss in the public what you would like to regulate, where it should be, what it should be defined as, and how it should look. Some of the potential impacts that you'll be considering to help define your public welfare concerns include groundwater impacts, water supply, wastewater treatment, electrical grid capacity and infrastructure requirements, land use compatibilities and development standards, environmental considerations including noise, lighting, wetlands, etc., and other best practices that are to be found across the nation and in other states for these types of uses. So, again, I have summarized the ordinance in a very broad terms, but I'm here for any questions. I know you want to hear from your public, and I'm here to answer at the end as well.
Thank you, Ms. May.
You're welcome.
Any questions?
No questions.
No, you hear from the public. I want to hear from the public.
Okay. Mr. John Blagett, and I do apologize if I've mispronounced your last name.
My name is John Blodgett. I live on 138 North 19th Street in Fernandina Beach, and I'm here to speak in favor of the moratorium. The reading I've done on these data centers is that they are local environmental catastrophes that do not do much economically for an area and put a lot of strain on local municipalities and local governments, trying to get them enough of the resources that they draw so heavily on, water and electricity. Not to mention many of them have extraordinary number of square feet, which I'm not sure how the stormwater regulations work with buildings that size. They're way bigger than say, an Amazon center. So I was heartened to hear the broadness of the proposed ordinance, and I would urge you to not only vote in favor of that moratorium, but also to really dig into studying the issue while you're formulating the regulations, the zoning regulations that you'll put in place to control this, because from what I can read all over the country, people have come up and said, this is just not what we need here. So that's what I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Rachel Stillwell.
Hello, good evening. My name is Rachel Stillwell. I'm a resident of Nassau County. First, I wanted to apologize for any of the inconvenience and confusion from when I made the petition. I was very personally relieved to hear that there was a massive miscommunication, and so I am just here to speak on what my research has given me. So, again, my name is Rachel Stillwell. I live here in Nassau County. My family relies on well water, and like everyone here, we depend on stable infrastructure and utility rates. sorry.
Ms. Rachel, will you read your address into the record,
Oh,
please?
yes, 36100 Sagebrush Lane.
Thank you.
This wasn't even my notes, but I wanted to just put this out there. I already struggle with health issues due to exposure to toxins growing up, so this is something that's very close to my heart because of my children. Okay. We are already seeing rising, rising costs from homeowners insurance to electricity, and in other areas where high demand facilities have been built, that demand has put additional pressure on utility rates. So when projects require major infrastructure upgrades, it raises concern that those costs could be passed on to residents. There are nearly 1,000 residents who have signed a petition originally for that data center that are concerned. And it's not people that are necessarily averse to progress, but they are averse to major corporations coming in and taking advantage of people that are unprepared. So I would like us to be prepared. I know that all of you are not just making decisions as commissioners. You are people who care deeply about this community and your own families. I support responsible growth. I understand data infrastructure is part of modern life. We already all rely on it. This isn't about stopping progress. It's about making sure that as it comes, it doesn't shift long-term risk or cost onto the people who live here already. High-load facilities with continuous power demand and large-scale water usage need real infrastructure support in our area that raises concerns about the Florida aquifer, which our homes, farms, and ecosystems all depend on. Here's the key issue. Once groundwater is stressed or infrastructure is expanded and rates rise, those impacts are hard, if not impossible, to reverse. If projections are wrong, residents alone bear that risk. So the question isn't whether data centers are good or bad, it's whether they can operate here without creating long-term strain or shifting costs onto the community. I ask the board respectfully to require clear site-specific data on water and power demand, including peak and drought conditions, independent analysis of impacts on wells, infrastructure, and build-out review, not just early phases.
Thank you, Ms. Stillwell. I appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Mr. Chad Charland. If you'll please say your name and your address in the record.
Yep. My name is Chad Charland, 3046B First Avenue, Fernandina Beach. I first became aware of data centers in 2024 through my work as the conservation chair with the local chapter of the Florida Native Plant Society. I was initially shocked by their gargantuan size, hundreds of acres, thousands of acres, subdivision-scale development projects full not of homes, but warehouses running powerful computers around the clock. I read more stories about the incredible energy demands of data centers, how their energy demands were causing utility bills to skyrocket for local residents where they were built. I read about how some data centers were so large they required the building of new power plants just to supply them with electricity, power plants large enough to electrify an entire city. Then I read about the water demands. For some projects, 1 million gallons a day, how they caused wells in rural Georgia to run dry. I'm sure many others, like the Rachel previously, will talk about the unbelievable amounts of fresh water, drinking water, data centers suck up, our drinking water. And it's appropriate that during a historic drought, as we've all been choking on wildfire smoke the past 2 weeks, we should be thinking about water and how best to use it, how best to conserve it. Water here can seem like an inexhaustible resource. I can assure you it is not. I suggest our water should be reserved for our drinking supply, for our homes and our businesses, and for our farmers to irrigate their fields, not given to Mark Zuckerberg and Elon Musk so they can make another $1 billion off of us. Back in September of 2025, when I first read about a potential data center coming to Nassau County, I emailed each of you to make you aware of the potential threats these community destroyers can bring to places like ours. I also introduced the idea of enacting a data center moratorium for Nassau County to allow you and us to get a better understanding of what exactly these projects can do to a place. When I sent that first email, I didn't think we'd ever be here, actually discussing a moratorium in a public forum. I want to thank you for listening to me and your constituents. I want to thank you for being open-minded, and I especially want to thank the people behind me, the people in the community who reached out to you subsequently and shared on social media objections to any construction of data centers in Nassau County. Opposition to data centers is the most pressing matter affecting this community, my community, an issue that has encouraged me actually to run for office for the first time, for State House in this district, with the hopes of enacting a data center moratorium and more regulations on the industry statewide. Look at Georgia. Look around the country and the backlash to data centers among local communities coast to coast. This is the last thing we need in Nassau County, and I encourage you to move forward with the moratorium.
Thank you. Ms. Patricia Sam. If you'll please state your name and address for the record.
Yes,
thank you.
thank you. Patricia Somm, 95332 Bentgrass Court, Fernandina Beach. I want to start by thanking the Commission for considering a moratorium. Nothing good can come from a data center. And I have a 35-plus year career in data, AI, cloud computing. Nothing good will come of this. I'm not going to repeat some of the things that were already said, noise, light, air, water, et cetera. But I'm going to talk about something very insidious going on in Florida. I used to live in Sarasota County. In Sarasota County, the property appraiser, Bill First, started a political action committee, American Mission Florida. They've already funneled $2 million to a gubernatorial candidate who has said, I want Florida to be the #1 data center capital of this country, if not the world. Okay. So we've got people within counties now funneling money from tech bros, okay, we've mentioned a few of them, into counties to get data centers. This is serious stuff. They are going to spend hundreds of millions of dollars to fund candidates in our state at the gubernatorial level and at the local level, our local representatives, state senators, perhaps some of you who are on this commission. You're going to have strong spines to get through this because they are extremely serious. You're talking billionaires who spend $100 million on their weddings. You think it wouldn't spend $200 million to get a data center in Nassau County? So I wanted to bring up this, what I think is really insidious, shady stuff that is going on. And at the county level, when I heard this, and I lived in Sarasota County, I was horrified to know that a county official is funneling money from Silicon Valley into candidates that will impact how we all live. And I just want to end by saying, that I think very highly of this commission. I've come to a number of meetings. I have Hupp remembers me. I'm constantly in on something. And so I want to, again, thank you very, very much for considering the moratorium. I have material here. I'm sure a lot of us could share material with you as you go through your assessment of what the dangers will be of having a data center any place in Nassau County. And if I can be of any help as somebody who knows that business, pretty heavily, and also has an ecological mindset to provide information and sit on any kind of consumer panels to help you guys in your decision making year out, I would be very happy to do that.
Thank you. Ms. Richard and Susan Haber.
Not speaking, just left a comment. Maybe I checked the wrong box, excuse me.
Okay.
There you go.
Ms. Carla, I apologize, this handwriting. Ms. Carla, will you come to the podium and say your first and last name for the record with your address? Thank you.
My name is Carla Voisert. I live at 86183 Caesars Avenue in Yulee, and I want to bring it back to local. We've been told in the last month, we can't water our yards but once a month. We can't power wash in some cases, and they even I've even seen suggestions from the county that we should curtail gardening or planting. That's one of my escapes from the world. If we don't have the water to water our lawns, we definitely don't have the water for a data center. It would impact us unbelievably, and our infrastructure will not support it, and I don't think it's going to get there to support it in anywhere in the near future. And I want to go back to watering my yard. I want green grass, not brown grass. I want to let my tomatoes grow. I want my flowers to be able to bloom. And if we can't do that, we certainly can't do a data center. Thank you.
Thank you. I have no more speaker cards at this point.
Madam Chair, I move to approve tab P.
Second.
Motion made by Commissioner Martin, seconded by Commissioner Gray. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Motion carries. Tab